A lot of real estate professionals spend time trying to convince you that you should buy a house instead of rent. I don't think like that. I actually saw an Instagram post the other day of a local realtor, and he had like 4 points of why you should buy a house instead of rent. And so I want to go through some of those.
I'ma buy plane ticket, run away by myself for a minute. I don't have any limits.
And this agent's posture is actually very common. This kind of idea that you can convert people into being buyers instead of actually just finding people that already want to buy. And since I've been in Tampa, I've actually tried to do the opposite with people. Because when I moved here, I first rented, and so why wouldn't I recommend that path for others? There are big movements and influencers that talk about renting compared to buying, and many of them advocate for renting because of the flexibility, because you don't have to maintain properties, because you don't have big expenses like a roof. And buying often does cost more, especially up front. And now, does it cost more, or are you investing that in a property? It's kind of up for you to decide how you want to think of that. A few of the ways that buying costs more up front. You have a down payment. You typically have a down payment. Even if it's 3.5%, that's cash you have to come up with. And there's about another 3% for closing costs. So on a $300,000 house, that's $18,000. And what other things do you often spend money on when you own a house? Like, for instance, in my scenario, we put in a fence, we built a jungle gym, we put on a new roof, but actually the sellers contributed toward that, so we didn't pay for all of that. But if we were renting the house, would we not care if there wasn't a fence? Or would we not care if there wasn't a jungle gym or a shed? We built a shed too. So we've spent all that money. If we were renting, would we just get by without it? Okay, let's get into the things this agent was saying on this Instagram post. One of them was, he was saying that your payment will never go up. And there is some truth to that. So your mortgage payment is PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And unless you pay cash for a house, it's always going to be structured this way. Your principal and interest from the beginning of the loan to the end is that total amount is set as the same. In the beginning, it's really interest heavy. At the end, it's really principal heavy. But your taxes and insurance will likely go up over the years, meaning your monthly payment will go up slightly over the years. Now, not as big of jumps as rent, typically, but it will still change a little bit. Another point he made was that you can always refinance your loan later when interest rates go down and lower your payment. And yes, you can do this, but there are costs associated with refinancing. Sometimes those are wrapped into the new loan, but it still is a cost to you. There's a pretty common rule of thumb that if you can reduce your interest rate by about 1%, then you recoup those costs if you stay in the house about 3 years. And then it's after those 3 years that you start saving money. Now, depending on your lender, that might be more years or less years, depending on the fees associated with that. But in this scenario, your 30-year loan also resets. And there are ways to do a rate adjustment without doing a full refinance, depending on who services your loan and depending on who issued it initially. That's a little bit trickier and not something that people often do. Also, with this refinance, you have other expenses like an appraisal, not so expensive, maybe a 4-point inspection if your house is older. And those aren't huge expenses, but they are still there. A refinance is not just like you go to the lender and say, hey, I want the new lower rate. That's not how it works. Okay, the third point that this person made that I want to talk about is that your home is like a savings account. This might be the point I actually agree with the most. But there are still nuances to this that you need to think about if you're wanting to buy a house and if somebody's trying to convince you to. I can't believe I'm like talking to a camera in the middle of the airport and people are just walking by me and I feel like they don't even notice. Maybe they do. Maybe it's just normal now. I don't know. It still doesn't feel normal to me. So one of the ways that I agree with this savings account idea is that it is kind of like that, but it's not directly like that. It's not like you're making a payment and 100% of that is savings. Most of that payment is for fees, interest, insurance, and taxes. You don't get that money back. Now, there are ways to feel like you've gotten that money back, but you don't actually get that money back. You can get it back through the property appreciating. Appreciation is just the value of the home going up between the purchase and the sale. So you don't get that money back unless you sell the property, right? And there's also costs associated with selling a house, like realtor fees and closing costs, all these kind of things. And there are also ways to force appreciation. So a house we lived in Colorado, we updated a lot of it while we lived there, and we spent about $12,000 updating it. I did most of the work myself, watched YouTube videos of how to do it, and then when we went to sell it, it had appreciated about $100,000. Some of that because of the market, some of that because of those updates. But we can't act as if there's no risk associated with buying a house, and you often have to take risk to make money. But say you live in this house and you make your payment dutifully for 5 to 10 years, and you have to sell it when you do. You get a job or there's something going on where you have to sell your house. You get a divorce and you have to sell it. What if that happens to be in a downturn of the market? Then what if you just broke even? What if you feel like you paid rent the whole time and you didn't get any of it back? That's kind of what that would feel like. Now, I do think there's more to that. There is a sense of ownership and comfort and pride that comes with owning your own house. And maybe that's what you want. And that's what I would say is if that's what you want, then you should do it. If you want to buy a house, if you want to own a house, if you want to be able to make it yours and feel unique about the memories that you've made there, then that's when you should do it.